Ah, pá, eu acho que sim, Pedro. Pelo menos aqui já apareceu. O convite já deu para enviar. Mark, I've invited you. You have to accept it there. Boa noite. Vamos lá. I've invited Mark again.
Wait.
Oh, yes.
It wasn't. It wasn't like that before. I'm so sorry.
No. This is a bug on Instagram because first I couldn't invite you and then I could. Well, great. We have great Portuguese trumpeters here. Um, some great soloists and teachers. Pedro, Renata. All right, so it's good. Well, Mark,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming, man. Sorry about this, and I'm really
No
happy
worries. No
because
worries.
this is
Happy to
one
be
of
here.
the most important interviews that I've done in this channel, and you will understand why. Especially because you are connected with Bach, Conn Selmer now, and
Yes.
is the brand that is the biggest name in our country, in Portugal. Everyone goes to the Bach and has that big tradition. So it's good to understand what you do, what is your role, and how we could get a bridge to Portugal somehow to do something as well.
Yes.
So can you tell us a bit about you from the beginning? Where are you from? How you did start on the music? Because you are a brilliant trumpet player, and thank you so much because I love your job as well. Tell us a bit
Oh,
about that.
well, thank you very much for having me. I grew up in South Carolina in the southeastern part of the United States. Just like any other kid, I just started when I was 12 years old playing the school band. Um, when I was, it seemed to be the only thing I was much good at. I couldn't hit a curveball. So, and the more I got into playing the trumpet, the more I enjoyed it. And I particularly remember when I was young, Wynton Marsalis was a big influence. Empire Brass. I think anybody. I'm 48, so I think anybody around my age would talk about those two, uh, that group and Wynton early on. And so I went to college at a school called Appalachian State to study music education, and I was there for a couple of years. And I had a really great teacher named Joe Phelps, who's passed away. But he was a student of Bill Adam at Indiana University. And I wound up transferring to Indiana and studying with John Rommel. John's been there over 30 years, and I was one of his first students. And so I went to IU and I studied with John and had a great experience. And then I did a master's degree at the University of Cincinnati. And I should also mention, by the way, my high school teacher was a man named John Ency. And John was really great for me. He exposed me to a lot of music, always making cassette tapes, if anybody remembers those, of
Yes.
Maurice Andre, and Clifford Brown, and Clark Terry, and all these great players. But I went to IU to study orchestral music. And so I played the orchestras there, had a great experience. I love Indiana. I always say good things about it. And then I went to University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, and I studied with Marie Speziali. And Marie was the first woman to have a titled position in a major U.S. orchestra. And she was associate principal of the Cincinnati Symphony for, I think, 32 years. And I love her to death. And she's a
Yes.
tough teacher, and but love her like a second mother.
I saw
Um,
a video of her the other day talking. Oh man,
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah, she's fantastic.
Unbelievable. Yes.
She and John were just the two great teachers. And then I went back to Indiana and studied for a year and with John. And then I won a job in the Jacksonville Symphony in Florida. I should say in the middle of that, I played a 1-year position in Charlotte Symphony. And then I wound up leaving Jacksonville. I moved to Charlotte, where I lived in the Southeast for a long time. And I did a lot of freelancing. I played with the orchestras around there a lot. I did a lot of music contracting, a lot of teaching, and eventually did a doctorate at Winthrop University. I taught there for a long time. I did a doctorate at SUNY Stony Brook, where I studied with Kevin Cobb. And I also studied a lot with Jim Pandolfi and Michael Sachs and Vince Penzarella. So those are probably my main influences and how I grew up.
They are a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot
They
of
are
that. And then I taught at the University of North Florida and at Winthrop University. I taught at Appalachian State University for a bit, and the University of Akron later. And now I'm teaching 1 year at Purdue Fort Wayne, but I'm leaving pretty after the semester because it's too much work.
Well, I can imagine
teaching in Bach. Yeah.
No, especially now with your new position, and we will go there later, which is an honor for anyone to have that position, especially in that brand. That's my idea. But you also have a channel with podcasts, with interviews, well, which I want to promote here because I think everything, especially the good ones, we should all be united because we are sharing information in a free way to everyone, and that's amazing. That's the idea of all of this. That's why we take our time. And your program is called Mark's Mouthpiece, so people can find you on Facebook and on YouTube. And you had Akan Adenberger, you will have Wayne Bergeron, or you had already. So we are talking about the biggest names that most of them I didn't even have them here, but you have them there as well. So it's good. It's good so people can listen to them. When is your next one?
The 7th. The next two I have, Phil Smith is on the 7th.
Yes, I saw. And I will watch. Yes.
And the next one I have lined up after that is Tanya Darby, great lead and jazz player from Berkeley, and so she's on the 15th, so on the Tuesday. So I give everybody a Valentine's Day break. But but those two are the next, and then I have a few more I'm working on after that.
Yes, but Phil Smith is someone that everyone should for sure watch and listen to it. So Mark, now I know you are a freelance player. You are a teacher as well, and as you said, you have been always connected to the classical side of the trumpet, or have you been through any time that you were connected with big bands with that style, or was always that passion?
I think professionally, it's always been more classical, but when I was in school, I wanted to do everything.
Yes.
I wanted to do everything. I played, I should mention Dominic Spera at Indiana University was the jazz ensemble director for me, and I love him like a grandfather, and he recently passed away, and I was lucky to spend a lot of time with him at the end of his life. But yeah, he was the jazz band director at Indiana, one of them, he and David Baker. And so I was in Dominic's band for a while, and as much as I wish I could improvise very well, it's not something I've really ever done very well.
Same with me.
but I think anything that I can do, maybe not lead trumpet playing, but
you like to do it. Yes.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, it's the trumpet.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Because some people play classical professionally, but they prefer big bands, but they never had the chance to, because life sometimes chooses a path and you just need to follow in it. And now we're gonna talk. I will show an album here really quick of a person that is your friend for sure, and I know he is. And it arrived yesterday. He's one of my heroes, and I love him to bits as well. He's one of my great friends. Morris is a Bach artist. Morris Northcote, of course.
Fantastic.
Tornada.
Yes.
This is played. Yeah, and this is played with Bach. This album, and if you listen to it, some people think that Bach has that sound there, and Morris make it sound vintage. Totally, with a new Bach, he makes it sound like Harry James did that sound. So, tell me a bit about the Bach. What makes Bach special? I think, for example, the Bach 37, and I said this a lot of times, is my ever favorite trumpet. It's a trumpet I would have if I had another one. That's it, because it's a blank instrument. You can go from any style, from any kind of sound, it comes out. Tell us a bit the history and what took you until that, because you are a Bach artist first.
am a Bach artist, and now the position I have with the company is actually working actually with artist relations now. So, which affords me the ability to still play and eat at the same time. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, and I know Morris sounds fantastic on that recording, by the way. So I wanted to say that,
Yes.
and I think he's playing actually a 43 on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But the sound, and I mean, why I've always gone to that sound because I grew up. That's what I grew up hearing. I mean, Adolph Herseth and Phil Smith and Mike Sachs were my trumpet heroes, and
Yes.
and I've always said if the sound that you hear in your head, it's got to match what you hear in your hand. What's in your hand has to match what's in your head, right? So
Yes.
those are the sounds that I always grew up listening to, and that I heard, and that I feel matches the voice I want to have in front of people.
Yes.
I think it's the most. I think it's a resonant, really rich, vibrant sound, and I think, and there's a lot of great makers. I'm not taking away anything
Yes.
from the maker, but
Yes.
I feel very comfortable that sound has enough flexibility to do whatever the musical situation is I need to do.
Yes. Yes. And that's really important. And we can see. I said in my last interview with Josh, Tom Walsh is playing with a Bach 37, and everyone knows he plays lead crazy,
Yeah.
and he plays commercial. And if you see the classical orchestras in Portugal, they all play Bach 37, most of them. So
Yeah.
it is an instrument that is really clean. Now, there is a myth. I play with a vintage trumpet. I'm one of the king artists, but for the Age and White company, not for the Conn Selmer, so
Right.
the original. And I play with the Liberty, which gives me that kind of sound that I like on the background as well. But there is a myth that the vintage Bachs are much better than the new Bachs. So everyone tries to find that Bach from 19. Tell us a bit about, because I've tried the anniversary version a few months ago, and I was crazy how well that instrument played. What did they do? What did they change on that model from the last ones?
I would say there are a couple things. Somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s, a few things changed in the design for various reasons. I'm not sure why. But the two things that really changed were they went from the two-piece valve casing, where nickel and
Yes.
brass, to a one-piece. And that creates a different sound because the resonance is different there. And they started putting the seam underneath the bell, as opposed to on the braces. So when it's on the braces, it vibrates differently. So now we have a thing where the 190s are the two-piece valve casing and the side seam, and the 180s are the one-piece and the underseam. And they're both sound great. I think they're both excellent trumpets. I think it just depends on what your ear
Yes.
wants to go. But I personally play the 190s. Yeah, I play the two-piece valve casings.
All right. Okay. I found out when I was looking for Bachs, and some students come here for me to try them before they buy. And the late 70s, I find them a bit harder to play. They are a bit, I don't know, is like they are not as open as well. Maybe it's the resonance you are talking about. Is not the same feeling. That's right. Yes. Okay. So in terms of artists, how can, and this is important, I'm not talking about everyone to punch you on Facebook now about this, but taking your position, I'm talking about professional people with proofs of what they've done. How can they, for example, a Portuguese girl that is here brilliant and she plays, how can she become a Bach artist? What is the process?
Well, there will be a process. I would say right now, one of my main jobs is to work on the artist roster and because we have some new products coming out. So along with the new products, there will be a new website, the Bach exclusive website. And so I'm trying to kind of get a hold on that roster, because historically my position is a new position.
Yes, because I knew Stephanie.
Yeah.
I
And and her job was a little bit different with that. And I'm a little more, I think, active with some of the artists as far as getting social media content, making sure they're taking care of things like that. So right now it's a rather large roster. So we're really holding off adding a lot of new people applying at the moment. I my guess is maybe in a year we'll be accepting some applications again. But in the meantime, because we have the new instruments coming out, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of things we're doing for that. And then also the new website and some of the features that are going to be on that. It takes a tremendous amount of time, and anybody that comes on the roster, we really try to take care of them as well as the people that are already on there, and make sure that we're taking care of their needs so they can represent the brand in the best possible way.
Exactly. All right. Okay. So this answers a few friends of mine that were really curious, and I'm talking about brilliant players. One of them, I sent you the videos, and I really want you to watch that guy, only that
Absolutely.
guy. I asked you.
Of course.
For me, and for most people, he's probably the most brilliant player of my country at the moment, of the young generation, and he plays with the Bach 37 mark. If you see it, it's full of holes, and he's a professional guy. He plays as you cannot imagine. He's totally taped. That's unbelievable crazy. How he can play.
I will absolutely watch this video. I promise I will take care. I'll watch it.
No, but please do, because you will be surprised. He's a brilliant guy. Anyway, let me go to a part now that I couldn't go with Josh, and I felt really sorry, but we're going to do a masterclass later. So, but we'll take the chance today with you. You are a teacher. You are a teacher, and you are inside of a market that is the American market, the freelance market, which is much more competitive than here. And it is because trumpets in America is a big tradition, is something different. In Germany as well, of course, and Switzerland, but I'm from Portugal, so we are a smaller country. If I play in England, which is different. Tell me, what is, for you, for your students, what is the most important? They should practice every day. What should be the base? What should be a little routine, if you believe in a routine, because some people doesn't. But what should they have in mind and on the fingers every time?
I think a couple of things. Number one is to make sure that before you pick up the trumpet, you know what you want to sound like. I think that's the most important thing, is knowing what you want to sound like. There's always many ways to get there, but if you just pick it up and start to play, who knows what you'll really sound like. So the focus has to start there. For me personally, my routine has a couple different parts. I don't start with the mouthpiece. Some people do. I think that's fine. Some people like the lead pipe right away. I just start to play, but I play easy long tones in like between a G and a low C. Yes. I don't like to go too low too soon, because I feel like I open up a bit much. I like to do some lip bends, and then I do the Chickowitz studies, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yes.
And a lot of chromatic scales, like 2-octave chromatic scales, not going incredibly high, but just to loosen up. And then I would say flexibility, usually either from some combination of violin, Schlossberg, or irons. And then articulation studies. Sometimes I will just play simple scales, or I will use the Chris Gecker book. I like that book quite a bit.
All right.
So those are the things that I tend to gravitate toward too. Also, I should mention the Ernest Williams Method of Scales. I like that book quite a bit also.
Which one?
Ernest Williams.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that book I find it's quite good. So
now,
that's mostly what I do for my routine.
That's well, actually really similar, which is good. It's good to know. I always ask. I'm not asking for me, but I'm trying to see if I'm doing the right thing sometimes as well. No. I learn a lot with the interviews, and of course everyone is different. But I think in the same way. Now, you are an author and a co-author of a few books, and everybody that I've learned with, the greatest trumpeters in the world, they use the Chickowitz. Every single one, and was a book that I didn't know until late in my career, even after the army, when I was a professional. And Flavio from Brazil came and said, "No, you need this." And I was, but so slow, just but what a difference it makes in our playing. So you are the co-author of that, and you have worked with the book, the Vincent Chickowitz, with his son
Michael
as well. Or grandson.
He has one, well, with his one son who's the trumpet player.
Oh, right, okay.
He has two other sons, but only Michael's the trumpet player.
Michael, exactly, exactly. All right, so tell us a bit about that and how important that is. And if you know the son, you know the history. what was the concept behind that? Because sometimes it's important to understand what he had in mind.
Well, so I'll back up. To be clear, I never was able to study with Mr. Chikowitz directly. But I will say, John Rommel, who was my teacher at IU, when I first got there, he was still young. He was in his 30s. And he would go watch Mr. Chikowitz teach, for several days and come back, and I thought that was really great because he was getting that knowledge after he was already a professional and taking it in a certain way. So he always used those exercises on us when we're talking about the long tone studies, the right? So we would play those back and forth a lot in lessons. And I, as a student, I heard the Chicago Symphony many times, of course, many years after Mr. Chikowitz retired, because I think I was 2 when he retired.
Yeah.
But of course, I heard Herseth a lot. I heard that brass section a lot. And so that was always the sound concept I was drawn to. And those were the exercises that I grew up doing. And I looked at this and I said, well, the guys that do stamp, I mean, I do stamp sometimes, but that
Yes.
book is published. And at the time, there was one book that was written about how to do the stamp book, which was the Roy Poper book. So what I wanted to do was preserve those exercises to start with, because, if you don't print it, it goes away. And it was just
Yes.
around in photocopy form. And so what we decided to do was take as much of his own words. And so there's an article that the Instrumentalist magazine let us use that Chikowitz wrote, which I think is a fantastic article. And then we compiled various former students to talk about how they did these exercises, because even though they're the same notes, he could do them slightly different with other people.
Exactly.
So that's what we did. So we put those in print. We kept it exactly as he had it with the tempo markings that he has. However, those tempo markings are quite a bit slower than what he actually did with people. So they're not to be followed so much, and probably we might even take them out at some point. But we put them in there because we wanted to stay exactly as he had printed that material. And then we printed the book with Tom Rolfe's recording, the principal trumpet of the Boston Symphony as a student.
Yes.
Recording those exercises to really give people a sense that they're not so metronomic and strict, that they are quite free and to loosen. And the real point of those exercises, if you read and listen to the things he said, he felt like when people did Schlossberg too soon or lip flexibility, they wound up kind of being stiff in their playing and not as free. And those exercises all have a finger note in between each partial of the overtone
Yes.
series. So that's kind of the how that exercise works. I will say too, I think it's important, if anybody's teaching young students, that they really understand that those are in a key. A lot of times, because they start on the dominant and then there's a half step below it, a lot of young students will assume the first line's in G and they're not hearing. So they need to understand that they're starting on a dominant and that second note is just a passing tone. But that's basically how we did it. We just wanted there to be an explanation from firsthand students. And then we proceeded to take the etudes that he used, the flow studies, and to put those in the book and have as many of those examples recorded as we could as well. And great commentary by former students like Larry Knopp and Mark Hughes and a lot of other folks.
Yes.
And, and I will say it influenced me quite a bit in my playing and teaching, just hearing and reading the things he said. I think Larry Knopp saying, make every breath like your first when you're doing those etudes is a very important thing. So that's kind of how the book came about. And I cold called Michael and said, hey, we should do this project. And I went to Chicago and talked him into it. And for over 12 years now, we've been partners and good friends and working very hard on all these projects.
Yeah. Well, you said something that is really important. And when I interviewed Mario Guarneri, he was a stamp student, of course, and we went through the same, because it's really important to understand what the author wanted from that. and not just being playing the exercise because it's. And you said something that is really important. That is read what he wrote. So, and I think that is a problem, especially in Europe. And I'm gonna say this. I know it's not cool, but it happens. Everyone still uses photocopies, and the photocopies or on internet they find the exercises, and the exercises don't bring the text.
Right.
They bring just the notes, and people downloads them and plays them. To avoid this, and I know this shouldn't happen, but we know how technology has. Where can they find the text, or how can they read it online, for example, to avoid doing a mess?
I guess buy the book. And
Yes, yes,
yeah, yeah,
that's absolutely what we want. Yeah.
yeah, I guess, and you can find that at Studio 259 Productions, and that the name of the company is brought about because that was Mr. Chikowitz's door number and his
All
studio
right.
Northwestern. So that's
That's
why
all.
it's called that. No, we don't have the printed the words. We don't have anywhere other than the books. But I do agree with you. It is important. I think it gives good context. I think that, and I also feel like there's something to having pictures in a book and telling a story that way that kind of keeps somebody's focus and attention and mind somewhere
Yes,
rather than just the notes at some point.
yes, yes.
And
But
I also think it helps foster the curiosity to go and listen to those guys play. I mean, anybody that's heard the Heldenleben recording and knows that that's Mr. Chikowitz playing the first E flat trumpet part, here's what kind of a player he was.
oh yes,
And
oh
hearing
yes,
Butterseth play and people like this, it's really important to have that concept in your mind.
yes. So what other and thank you for saying the website. So I really advise people to buy the books, and I buy the books as well. One of them, for example, was Clark, and all my students were coming here without book
Of
photocopies, and
course.
of course I bought. And if we read, this is really important. Just this is really important. And
Yes.
people sometimes just jumps to the. I never understood James Stump until Mario told some things here that the way he wanted it was totally different of what I had in mind. Because I jumped that part on the book. I did that on Stump. So this is really important. Which other books did you work, or which other books are you working on now?
Very good. So there's the 3 books that we self-published that Rob Roy McGregor helped us with, those.
That-
And then we also did a low brass version of that book that's sort of a compilation that has the exercises and selected etudes. And we had different people help us with that. Trying to remember who all was involved. I think Jay Friedman was involved. Mick McKay was involved. Not Mick wasn't in that one. Joe Alessi was involved. Different trombone players. I think Steve Mead was in that book. And then, the newest book we have was a Hal Leonard publication.
Oh yes.
And that one, Larry Knopp from Vancouver and Tom Rolfs recorded the whole book. And this book, it has those exercises, but it also has, we took selected flow study etudes and we found a way to make them for younger students work.
Good.
So we took like just an A section, and we might have changed the key, or we might have changed an interval, but something, because the whole point of those etudes is similar to playing Clark studies, right? So if you play the second study, it has a flow behind it, but it's a fairly smooth study. And this was to develop musical material in a very smooth fashion. So, and but we wanted this new purple book for a teacher to be able to use that book for an entire lesson. So it has the long tones, it has the flow studies, and then there were about 8 or 9 of the originals that I was able to use when we edited them. And then I took the same books that he used and I pulled other etudes out and made them work for young students. So they're still flow studies, they just weren't originals.
Under the same concept.
The
That's what
same
you mean.
the same concept. And then
Yes.
the middle section of the book has a lot of lyrical studies. I have a lot of copies of Mr. Chikowitz's handwritten Conconi etudes. So we took
Why?
some of those etudes, some of the other lyrical etudes he would use, like there's a couple of Bordonis are in there, a Blažević study is in there along with the Conconis. instead of having a long etude that a young student couldn't get through, we just took like an A section. And again, we would modify the key, we would modify a couple of intervals. And then for articulation, in the back of the book, there are Claudemir and Arbin exercises, but they're brought into ranges that work for young students. And often we'll have them in a couple of different keys. So as they progress, if they need work on a higher or lower register,
Yeah.
they can access that. But I think also having those recorded examples of Tom and Larry are crucial to that book.
Yes. So the book comes with a CD with that recordings, or
that one has a downloadable
download? Yes.
And as time goes on, more and more things will be downloadable and not CDs, unfortunately. Yeah. But also in the Purple Book, one thing I like about it too is there are a lot of one-liners and maxims, sayings that from Mr. Chikowitz, a couple from Mr. Herseth, and a couple from Mr. Jacobs that are in there also.
That's nice. That's nice. Okay, so that book, just for the teachers to understand. Now I will buy one from you later, and we will talk. That's good. That's good for the students. No, it's really good, because what you are saying, it is adapted for students, and that's really important. We are talking about a book from grade 1 to grade 5, maybe.
Oh no, so, I think this book. You mean as far as a level? I mean, I've had professionals say they just keep this book in their case. I mean,
that's why I wanted to know. Okay,
but we wrote it with the idea that I've taught middle school students out of it, high school students out of it, and it hopefully sets them up in such a way that they can use the other books and then Arbin and all the other normal things that we use, but in a more healthy way.
Yes. All right. That's really important to know. Mark, out of curiosity now, why is your page, your podcast, called Mark's Mouthpiece? What is the relationship with Mouthpiece and not Mark's Trumpet?
Well, I figured the mouthpiece is like a talking, right? So it looks as much like a microphone as I could. So it just sounded catchy, I guess.
All right, but nothing that you were promoting mouthpieces on the time or something like that.
No. I'm a very one mouthpiece kind of guy. So,
but that's what I'm going to ask you, because everyone wants to know. So, what trumpet do you play? Which trumpet do you play? The B flat.
My B flat is a 190 Bach 37. My C trumpet is a Bach 190 M pipe that Michael Sachs helped design. And my other Bach instrument's a Bach Mount Vernon cornet. The mouthpiece I play most of the time is a Bach 1 1/4 C. 20 big. Well, I've gotten off the 1C, so I've kicked that habit. But it's a 25 throat, 24 backbore.
Yes.
So some people switch between B flat and C, but I just keep the same one and try not to think about it.
Yes. Okay, Mark, it was an honor to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
I will post this interview on YouTube and Facebook later, and on the Instagram Trumpet Player Portugal, because it didn't go live there. But that's all right. It doesn't make any difference for us. Thank you so much for the honor.
It's my pleasure.
Anything you need from Portugal or the UK, I'm sure you have plenty of people, but I'm here as well.
Oh, there'll be a bed and breakfast at some point when Corona goes away that I'll need.
Exactly. But let's keep in touch and let's buy some books. I will ask you some links to buy that books, because I think they are really important, and it's important that people buy the originals.
Okay.
Right? Thank you so much.
Very much.
God bless you. Thank you.
Pleasure's
Take care.
mine.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.